I want to say this and I want to say that, and there's so much to say. We will move on because we are really tight for time. I'm not, I've taken the whole day off today. If we could move to Matt Crilley. Matt, who you'll be familiar with, is President of the National Union of Students Scotland. Matt, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hello. Can you hear me? I take that as a yes because I can hear myself, but I can't hear you anymore. I'll perhaps just begin, and someone can flag to me if you can't hear me. It's amazing to be joining you all today at this conference. I'm absolutely gutted that I'm not there in person. That had been my intention until I got a wee bit ill. I've been in contact with people that have had COVID, so probably not a good idea for me to be on the city campus today. But I'm really delighted to be joining you virtually. So thank you so much for having me around. So although I am the president of the National Union of Students now, I feel like I've been a student for ages. And as I was thinking about speaking to you today, I couldn't help but reflect on a campaign that I was involved with as a student, as a 19-year-old student, across Cathedral Street at the University of Strathclyde, where I studied and actually only graduated last week. But yeah, as a 19-year-old student back in 2016-17, me and a group of students were involved in a mental health campaign at our university. We essentially kind of realised that there was a group of us. Some of us were struggling with mental health. Others kind of just knew people and had friends, fellow students who were struggling with mental health. And it became obvious to us as a group of students that there was a bit of a problem on our campus. When students were presenting themselves, kind of going out there and actually asking for support, it wasn't necessarily there for them. And they'd been told that they had to perhaps wait months in order to actually be seen by someone. So we kind of identified this as a problem because we had a group of students that were a bit demoralised by the situation. So as a wee group of students, we set out to try and make changes on our campus. And as a 19-year-old, I'd done something pretty new for the first time. It was pretty daunting for me, probably quite annoying if you're a staff member here. I sent off loads of freedom of information requests to loads of different institutions because we were wondering, how does our experience on our campus compare to other students at other campuses? So I sent off loads of freedom of information requests. And I'm just going to be brutally honest, I'd done it under a pseudonym, which is like an absolute faux pas for sending freedom of information requests, but I was too scared. I was 19 years old. It was all very daunting to me. But we got the kind of data back, and we went out there and we asked quite practical questions about institutions. We didn't necessarily have a holistic view of mental health at the time. We were quite laser focused, I guess, on the resources that were available to mental health support resources within an institution. So we asked questions like, how many counsellors do you have? How many mental health advisors do you have? What other resources do you have for students that are struggling? And for us, we got that data back, and I remember being like utterly shocked by it at the time. I think we got 50 institutions to respond to us, and at the time, Strathclyde ranked 49 out of 50 in terms of our kind of staffing resource for the counselling service and mental health support at the university. So naturally, it was pretty bad. So I think it confirmed some of our fears that we actually were suffering a wee bit from a lack of a support service. So myself, a group of students, we took these findings, around the campus, spoke to different staff, spoke to students about it, and actually, I think it became the start of a really positive trajectory at the institution. Within a year and a half, there had been lots of new recruitment. Incredibly talented staff had been hired to help drive the mental health strategy for the institution, to help improve the support services open to students. And we truly did, I think, were involved in transforming and changing student mental health on our campus. And I think I start on this for a couple of reasons. Partly because it's the I probably consider it part of the journey where I'm here in front of you today, my journey in kind of student representation, but also really my first insight into learning about student mental health, and I've learned a lot since then. But fundamentally, I also learned that it was really possible to actually change, the nature of student mental health support at an institution if staff and students are working together on it. And I think there were some real successes coming off it. But I also learned too that mental health support for students, and mental health support more broadly, is far more complex than perhaps the narrow focus that me and this wee group of students had at the time. And I think that's where I'll launch off just now about what is the state of mental health in Scotland, and kind of what are the actual underlying issues perhaps in some of the cases for it. So the National Union of Students produced a report back in October 2020. It was produced by our amazing Think Positive project, which was referenced earlier and is funded by the Scottish Government. And our research back in October 2020 was based on a survey of over 3,000 college and university students in Scotland, as well as case studies of 8 different mental health and wellbeing support services in different institutions across Scotland. And we believe it's the kind of first in its kind to look at both further and higher education students' mental health in Scotland. And it is worth saying that the research was conducted just pre-pandemic, which I think has perhaps changed things a wee bit, but I still think that the research that it produced was incredibly insightful and hopefully useful for you folks today. So what did the actual research find? Well, it found that 50% of students cited a lack of money or financial pressures as having negatively impacted on their mental health. So half of students saying that money, financial pressures is really contributing to poor mental health for me. And alongside that, just shy of 50%, 49% of students said it's kind of a range of factors associated with my coursework load. Trying to cope with being a student, doing my course is what's contributing to poor mental health for me. So those were two of some of the biggest things that came out, was that there's money struggles and that's impacting on poor student mental health, and actually the pressures of having to be a student, the course is impacting on mental health. There were a couple of other really interesting insights, I think, into student mental health through the research, particularly that first year seemed to be a really crucial point for student mental health. 72% of people said it was the first year of their study, and whatever course they were on was where their mental health was affected. And of course, there was the big issue which the institutions reported, was that we were often having to backfill the NHS support services, which were under pressure. But for students, that meant, like when I started out back in 2016-17, and we were worried about students having to wait for support services. Our research showed last year that 60% of students were having to wait to access the support that they needed, and of that, just over half kind of waited over a month, and 1 in 5 over 3 months to access the support. But if there's one statistic which I think is incredibly valuable for us to reflect on today, was actually the disparity between higher and further education students on their awareness of mental health support services. So higher education students were 4 times more likely to know about mental health and wellbeing support services available to them than further education students. So roughly 80% of HE students knew what was available to them, compared to only 20% FE students. And I think that's a really alarming stat that we should really be working to help address. And we realise there's lots of different challenges that come with the different course structures. But I think in terms of recommendations, where do we take that next? What do we do about these things? And clearly, if financial pressures are demonstratively contributing to poor student mental health, then from our perspective, we think we need to deal with these financial pressures. We need to see improvements to the student cost of living support system, which makes sure that students, do have enough money to survive on. And likewise, though, if we're seeing that coursework load and dealing with actually being a student is such a crucial part to kind of generating poor student mental health, then we also need to look at what we're doing to help try and improve those pressures on students. So do we have, are we embedding mental health and well-being into learning and teaching practice in our colleges and universities? When we're designing curriculum, are we thinking about mental health and well-being? Are we looking at training staff? These sorts of things. And I think for us, equity access is really important for students. And we should be thinking about aligning up mental health strategies with student mental health agreements. But I do think that's perhaps really exciting and interesting about the conversation that you folks are launching with the likes of the toolkit. And I think I'll perhaps draw on a close on that. Is I think we've got a lot to do to try and help address some of the financial pressures that students are facing. But everyone in a college has the ability to, I think, to help try and contribute to this discussion about what is the actual workload of a student looking like in their studies. And I think we're in a good place just now. There's an active conversation about student mental health, probably more than ever, perhaps because students are struggling more than ever. But I do think it's now we need to be talking about our institutional mental health strategies. How are we going to alleviate this academic pressure that is put on students? And at the moment, we're in this new stage where we're talking about essentially redesigning education. Education has been totally upended over the last couple of years. So now is the chance for us, I think, to have these chats about what does the curriculum look like for students, how are we designing it in a way that actually embeds mental health and well-being within teaching delivery. And that will involve some difficult conversations about things like how are students assessed. It's been a really interesting part of the pandemic. We've seen less exams and more kind of take-home assessments. What is best? I don't actually necessarily have all the answers, but I think we really need to see studies in this. What do students want? My perspective as a student, I always wanted less exams and more take-home assessments where I was given a bit more time to do them. But hearing anecdotally through the pandemic where that's happened, some students have ended up working 24 hours a day in order to complete their assessments, which doesn't sound particularly great for their mental health either. So I think we do actually need to really take a look at these kind of things holistically and see what we can do. And then, of course, I think the final part I would perhaps add before I close is the training of staff. If staff are speaking to students on the front line, do they have the opportunity to be skilled in kind of mental health? And also the training of students. I would love for students to have the opportunity to take part in things like mental health first aid training, so that if we see our fellow classmates or students struggling, that we're at least partially trained to help try and help out our fellow students. So I think at that I'll perhaps end, because I think students are central to changing student mental health, as I think we felt we were as 19-year-olds back in 2017, 2016. And I think students will be at the heart of changing mental health and our college in the future. So thank you very much for having me along today.
He was great. He was a right ball of energy, wasn't he? His hands in the air, and you could absolutely feel that passion, from him. I can see why he, I'm quite sure, has a wonderful following. He was great. Again, so much I could say, but we're pushed for time, so we have to move to our panel. So I'm delighted to welcome on stage Dr. Claire Carney, Dr. Anna James, of course, and Gillian Plunkett.
Not a doctor.
Okay, so we have a couple of questions from you guys in the audience. If we've got time, I'm quite sure the guys will tell me. We'll try and get through as many as we possibly can. I have to say, I've really enjoyed today so far. It's been amazing, really, really, really amazing and thought-provoking. So, Dr. Claire, I'll start with you, if that's okay. A recent report on university students' mental health and well-being called Thriving Learners suggested that higher education institutions should incorporate student well-being as the measure of success as part of their enhancement model. But what do you think that would look like, and should this actually be considered for colleges?
Gosh, it's a $1 million question.
It's a big one, yeah, I know.
A question of two parts. So I would say yes to the second bit, which is it should be considered, but actually how it's measured is something completely different and really complex. And I think we've heard a lot about that this morning. Now, the time is right, absolutely, for us to consider it. And in fact, Matt and I are on, now let me remember the whole piece. It's an expert group for the development of a single tertiary quality framework.
Oh my.
Try and say that in the morning.
Yeah.
But a really important aspect of it is that in how we measure quality and quality of learning and teaching often is based on metrics. So it's easy to measure how successful our students have, apparently successful in terms of employment outcomes or the completion, but actually trying to measure well-being when there's so many things that are integrated and are part of. So actually, I'll throw the question back out. If anyone in this audience, either here or at home, wants to provide myself and Matt with some ideas of how we can measure that, because the time is right. There's a great opportunity for us to really shape that. So I haven't deflected the question. I'm saying that it's not straight and forward and easy at all.
I can imagine. I concur. And obviously, this is not my line of business. But if you are online, or indeed, we're all obviously very relaxed here. If anyone has got a question right now, or have a think about it, then we can come back to Dr. Claire. But I guess what you're saying is you're also looking for that interaction. It's feedback. That's also important.
Yeah. 100%. And in fact, what we're doing probably just now is doing Scottish Funding Council's job for them, because they're actively seeking this for them. And it is, we're all involved in education. So therefore, it's an opportunity for us to really change, an opportunity for us to change how we measure successful outcomes in education.
Okay, amazing. If you do have a question, if you're in the audience, then obviously let us know at the end if we've got time, we'll come back to it. Or indeed, if you're online, as Dr. Claire said, then keep them coming. I'm quite sure, from having met you, Dr. Claire, you're not someone that just goes home, you switch off. What, of course, we heard earlier on, I think you probably don't switch off, so you're always on it, looking at those questions and answers. Dr. Anna James, you work across the UK and in various sectors, including education, of course, and third sector areas. What are the main themes around mental health and well-being that you've really seen recently?
Well, in terms of the mental health issues that are being shown in FE particularly and HE, we're seeing a rise in all anxieties, and that would include OCDs, so compulsive disorders, generalised anxiety disorder, social anxieties, panic attacks, unfortunately. In the wider spectrum, we've seen a rise in borderline personality disorder, mainly because people have been separated during COVID, which has made people feel that with borderline personality disorder, which is one of the issues emotionally, that they have been abandoned during COVID. So we've seen a rise in the worsened symptoms of borderline personality disorder. And we've seen, unfortunately, a rise in suicidal thoughts. But at the moment, there's no evidence to show that a rise in suicide has occurred. But that'd be really interesting to look at that in terms of the FE age group, because a number of my colleges have struggled with suicides in the last few months. So I'd be really interested to relook at those figures. And we've also seen of course, I think you would expect this, but a rise in more severe depressions. And just generally in terms of mental health, people just not having the same coping mechanisms. And somebody mentioned it earlier on, but real sleep deprivation issues as well. So that's the sort of major themes that we're seeing. And I'd probably go on there, but it's probably enough to keep you thinking for now.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm quite, isn't it just wonderful that we can be so open and honest about this and talk like we are today, and can only be encouraged. Gillian Plunkett, of course, do you think that support services are adequately resourced to deal with student mental health and wellbeing issues at the city?
Well, I'm going to keep that answer quite short, and the answer is yes, but we need to stop just referencing counselling, because the Student Services Department has a lot of staff in it that support student mental health and wellbeing through finance and funding. That was something that Matt Crilley was talking about that still needs addressed. Through learning support, through our disability services, through our student advisors, through the Student Association and the student engagement team. So there are a lot of support staff who are supporting students with their mental health and wellbeing. What we are seeing just now, though, is we've had an injection of money from the Funding Council, but so has every other college and university in Scotland. So we're all vying for the same staff, and we're losing some of our staff to other colleges and universities. So that is causing a bit of an issue. So the answer is generally yes, but it's something I think we've got to keep our finger on the pulse with, because it's changing all the time.
Okay, and isn't everything nowadays work in progress anyway? You know, we can only address things and move on. Okay, 2 more questions from the audience. Vanessa, where are you, Vanessa? Vanessa, you have your own microphone.
Okay, so I had been asked to talk about the new paperwork that we're working on right now, the toolkit that's been mentioned quite a few times actually by a number of the speakers, which has been fantastic. So Gillian and I and Anna have been working with some of the teams based within the faculty that I work in, which is Education and Humanities, and we're working to really embed some of the key things that have been talked about by a number of the speakers already. One of the things that Matt said and Gillian picked up there was about the times within the student journey that can be stressful, that can really be a difficult step, a difficult stage. And what we're trying to do with the toolkit is look at those particular hotspots, for want of a better word, that we can then really embed the mental health and well-being of our students within those periods. And interestingly, we're still quite at early days, but interestingly, we're now beginning to talk about a dual toolkit, one for staff and one for students, so that staff feel able to address some of these issues that are rising. Now, it's really important to identify though and remember that it's not about replacing the support that is there, but it's rather than that, it's about enhancing the support that's there, so that myself as a class lecturer or as a curriculum head or as any member of staff have those tools, those skills that we feel able to support the student in front of us, but refer the student in front of us when that's needed as well.
Incredible. So your main question is, what do you see as the main benefit of the Building Student Resilience Toolkit? What's the main benefit?
I think it will be, just as Vanessa said, it's actually about support services and teaching staff working much more closely together, so that we actually embed mental health and wellbeing. We're teaching our students to be resilient at the same time as we're teaching them the vocational subject. And that's really important. It's important for them to learn, because they need that higher level cognitive skill to be able to learn, but also it's really important for them to take it into their future. So they're taking that into the workplace with them as well. So that's what's really important. And it's about giving our teaching staff a bit of confidence as well, that they can teach these skills, and also that they can work with the support services hand in glove. So there's no point in just sending students to support services to be fixed. We can't fix them. They actually need to learn and be able to build that resilience within themselves.
Yeah, you're not broken. I like what you said there, Vanessa, about a dual toolkit. So again, that feeling of integration. I'm going to move to Lauren, Councillor Lauren, smiling all this way this morning.
Yeah, I've been asked to kind of talk about the benefits of the psychoeducational groups that we've been doing at the City of Glasgow College, and I think there have been many that's been kind of reported by both the lecturers and the students. So, you know, with the onset of the pandemic, we had to work very quickly to develop our remote kind of support that we had available. And one of the things that we did was we developed our wellbeing workshops. And of course, you know, they were developed very quickly, and we're really, really happy to have done that. We worked with both the students and staff to develop the stress management and the coping in COVID workshops. And I think being a student in general involves a lot of challenges, you know, a lot of stresses around finances, around family issues, around, you know, balancing all of these things. And with the pandemic, there's lots of different stress and anxiety that's come with that, that's come with the blended learning. So the way students kind of work, socialise, learn have really been significantly impacted. And of course, it's really important that we tackle them. One of the benefits is, of course, knowledge is power for anyone. And I think that with our students, we want to empower them to be able to recognise those stressful triggers before they become really overwhelming. And I think early intervention and coping strategies do go hand in hand. We want to reduce the self-stigma and also the kind of social stigma of these behaviours and feelings. And I think not pathologising students is really, really important, and it's been touched on today. We want students to realise they're not alone, and I think our workshops have really worked on that as well. And we want to promote the counselling service and the wellbeing service, and to let students know that we are still here and we are working remotely, and we're here to support them. We're always evaluating our workshops with the feedback from students and continuously working on them. And, you know, we do know that student mental health and attainment are massively linked. And promoting the health and well-being of our students is so important, not only for their happiness, but for them to improve the educational outcomes. So, you know, we really feel that they're on course to deliver that.
Okay, brilliant. So we know, you know, that of course these workshops have been well received, which is excellent. I would like to attend them myself. I guess the main question would be then, so what are the main benefits of the psycho-educational group workshops?
So I think Lauren has mentioned some of them, but the biggest surprise for me and the biggest benefit was the reach. So person-centred counselling, we probably see about 140 students, 160 students a year. Workshops, it bumps right up to 1,500, 1,800 students, because we can have bigger workshops. And what Lauren does in those workshops is build a support network as well. So those students might leave that workshop, but they've still got each other, and they do share and are very supportive. So that's one of the biggest benefits of those workshops for me.
Oh, incredible. Thank you for the questions in the audience, and of course online as well. So I'm going to pass to Dr. Claire, who's just going to do a few closing remarks for us this morning. I wish we had an afternoon session.
Gosh, that was a surprise. I thought I was going to get an award.
Throwing you straight into the spotlight there.
So if you don't mind, I'll stand up. Actually, I think Anna deserves an award today. I think our frontal cortex was putting high demand for dealing with a situation where she had no mic, she had no notes, and was working. I could see your brain actively working through the strategy. So you weren't set up, Anna. That was that wasn't a Team City approach. Okay, sorry. So just to offer some closing remarks. My own reflections today are mostly from about 6 months ago, literally to the day where I found myself with a very much unplanned sick leave. But what that did, that I had a lot of time confined to a sun chair, which, whilst I'm not complaining at this time of year, most of you know me, that was actually quite stressful for me. And indeed, referring to Alex's slide, I am a proponent of a walking meeting. In fact, I did one of those digital workshops that was planned over lunchtime when I had back-to-back meetings all day, looked and what on earth is this? And I plug in and walk and listen. And that's what's important for us, to role model that, and that it's okay for somebody like me at my level to actually, I don't need to be sat at a desk to talk to you. We can walk and talk and actually achieve much more. Gillian's got much fitter. Marion, my PA, is like, oh God, we go for another walk. But actually it's really, really important. But the reason why I say that is that I did spend my time thinking and reflecting about how we spend most of our time dealing with and trying to manage the outcomes of mental health issues, and actually without really thinking about how we can change and manage and influence the inputs So we've talked a lot about, well, we've mentioned pre-induction, induction, assessment, and particularly over-assessment, for which we all have a responsibility for, and indeed in building those important college connections. So I'm hugely attracted by the approach where we consider staff and students together, how we work, live and learn, and how we consider those aspects as a collective rather than separately. A strategic focus on the well-being of our staff and students, a real Team City approach. So as you can tell, we as a college are committed to this work and approach. And whilst the conference in itself today was tremendous, actually it's 4 hours out of our time. And indeed, this is an ongoing project. And we would hope that it will extend over the next year and really shape and influence how we work and study together. And I'm sure everyone in this audience will look forward to the deliverables, but we all have a part to play every day in what we do. So to close, I'd really like to thank all of our speakers, the Minister, Keith Stewart, our Principal, Paul Little, Lee, Anna, Alex and Matt, and his dog. If anyone was paying attention, need to find out the name of the dog because he was so well behaved, for a wonderful and engaging keynote. So thank you for all, and of course for Gina for emceeing. I've got so many one-liners there, Gina, fabulous. I'd also like to offer sincere thanks to Gillian and her team, to Vanessa, to Occupational Development and faculty colleagues. This is really, a whole college approach. So I'd also like to thank our audience at home for participating and making this an engaging event. A special mention goes to the people in the background, to our creative industry staff and students who have supported the event, as usual, a Team City event. So thank you for all of you. One final piece, if you don't mind. I came across this morning and it fits with me, and I'm guessing many of you in the audience, which is, we are all clever. But you can differentiate yourself by being kind. So thank you.
Oh. Thank you, Dr. Claire. That was great. And I think all the guys upstairs will now be like, we can have a breather now. And thank you so much for having me as well. I love that quote at the end. I'm one for a quote. I must admit, I'm one for a wee meme, so I'm going to use that one. I'm stealing that one for the rest of today. I'm a professional thief, so that's on my Insta post. And yeah, we can all now relax on whether or not you're going to go for your lunch and spread the word. And of course, use the hashtag today as well, which is on the brochure, and spread the word. I think we all get to keep our brochures, don't we? Yeah, get to take the brochure away. Yeah, wonderful. And I guess, the feel that I get from you guys is to stay in touch and send questions and talk. And, obviously I'm a talker, so it's a bit different for me. I'd like to talk. I'm not someone sends me an email. I'm like, oh my God, just please pick up the phone. And I'm one for voice notes, as Scott, who very nicely booked me for today, would probably tell you. He's like, email. And I'm like, voice note. A talker rather than a writer. So thanks, Michelle. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your day, guys, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.